Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, my business partner, Mr. Jason Neal Patrick Harris Johnston Yellen, but also, and thankfully, joined by the wonderful Jessica Rabbit Lomas. Hello, you two.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm really excited to be sitting down with you because, A, we get to talk about some of our favorite whiskeys of the year, and B, we get to drink some of our favorite whiskeys of the year together as a threesome, as a team.
This is true. Very true. I have them right beside me, ready to go.
All right. And Jess, you're calling in from your flat in Glasgow.
I am.
And Jason, you seem to be either calling in from someone's house that you broke into or potentially a hotel room. I can't tell which.
I'm going to leave you guessing.
So it's the house then.
I can say no more.
Watch out for the sirens.
Regardless whether it's house or hotel, it is in Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore. What brings you to Baltimore?
Tamara has a wildlife conference, and I thought I would come here and see some local Baltimore, Maryland stores. And that is what I've been doing.
You're not treating the Baltimoreans as wildlife. So.
That is a conversation for another day. We're down here by the Inner Harbor, and it is a lovely setting. Lovely setting. Very nice for strolls, very nice for cups of coffee. I will say we got here our first night, ramen, wonderful ramen, right. 500 feet from the front door of where we are staying. And again, I will not commit to whether this is a hotel or a broken-in house.
Oh, my gosh. So you broke in. So the people who own the ramen joint, you've broken into their house.
I can say no more.
Luckily, this isn't being recorded. And we've got no way of knowing where Jason is, except for it's by a ramen place. Okay, right. Just loading up Google Maps here. Hang on. Ramen, Baltimore.
Not to aggressively change the subject, but I've got nothing in my glass. So where do we want to begin?
Yeah, so let's just talk quickly about what we're doing today, so our listeners know. Every year, we've released a podcast where we talk about our favorite things that happened in the year. What was our most favorite SCN online bottling, retail bottling, global bottling? What was our favorite non-SCN bottling? And then we would talk about our favorite episodes or our favorite conversations that we've had over, across the year. And I mean, truth be told, here it is October. We still have a couple more months left in the year. So we decided to separate our favorite podcast conversations for the purposes of this episode. And we'll talk about that at a later date in a future episode. But right now what we're doing is we are going to talk about our favorite Single Cask Nation online U.S. bottling, our favorite Single Cask Nation U.S. retail bottling, our favorite Single Cask Nation global retail bottling, as well as our favorite non-SCN bottling that we've tasted this year. And I know in the past we said it had to be released this year, and we've broken those rules where we say, well, I tasted it this year, but it was released another year. So it'll be interesting to see which one of us breaks the rules and which one of us abides by them.
Yeah, I really hope it's 24 release. I think it makes more sense for the end of year kind of run into the holiday season and the buying time of year. I've certainly taken it on as a recommendation for gift giving for this holiday season. Yeah. So that's the path I've taken on that. I'm looking over these little samples that I've got beside me. It's, where do we want to start on this?
Here's my suggestion. I thought, seeing as Jess, we have you in discussion, why not launch with what our favorite SCN global retail bottling is, what it is, why we chose it, and what we love about that bottling.
Okay, so I'm going to come in already breaking all the rules just to really upset Jason. And I've got some very famously incomplete Joshua Hatton lists on the go under this table. For the listeners of the podcast, my homework was to come up with one whiskey of the global releases. And under the table here, I have 3. But realistically, I could have made that quite a lot more. So, yeah. Oh, this is really difficult because I felt like by the time we hit record, I would have like a moment of clarity and inspiration would strike and I would be like, yes, this guy. And I'm already thinking about some of the ones I've not put on the table. It's not good, guys. It's not good.
You're so terrible at making final decisions.
I am, except when it comes to whiskey. I don't want to let anyone down, Jason. It's a team game. I don't want to let anyone down.
Right. I love this cask, and I love this cask too. And don't forget that cask over there. We love that one too. It is difficult, Jess. There's no doubt about it. And that was partly why we instituted the have a favourite and maybe talk about a runner-up, right? Because then you're given some lip service. The problem is then you have 2 runners-up and 3 runners-up and 4 runners-up. And they're all... I always imagine for this game, for this episode, all the SCNs are winners, right? It's which is the double gold. And I think judging panels should think about that. What could be a double gold? I think that would really make a difference to some whiskey judging.
Will you tell me how to do my job now? Wow. Imagine I turned up here and then you were like, pick your favourite. And I was like, I've got some bad news, guys. I hated every last thing we've bottled in the last 12-month period. And I've actually given up whiskey altogether. I only drink squash now. That's all I drink.
And by that you mean the small rubber ball.
Obviously. Like...
steeped in hot water.
Delicious. Okay, well... I feel like I have 3. Can I give you my reasons and then I'll give you the...
This is hilarious.
We're out the gate breaking every rule imaginable. But here we are. Do it.
I haven't even had a taste of whiskey.
Well, you can pour your whiskies while we're thinking about
mine.
it.
This is I've got.
If I say them really quickly, would that make you feel better? If I just made them into like one German style, really long word.
The problem is when this episode goes off the rails, we've normally had more whiskey in us. To have gone off the rails with not a drop of whiskey is a new
It's very kind of you
wrinkle.
to assume I've turned up to this recording having not had a single dram in preparation. Okay. Oh, shit. Okay, well, I'm going to have to go for a really obvious one then. This is really upsetting that you're not letting me get away with breaking all the rules.
I love it. Oh my gosh, holding people's feet to the fire is my favourite
Okay, it's
thing.
also difficult
Just
because
don't ask my
our
kids.
last release also had 8 casks to choose from, not just 6. So you've actually made it worse. I'm blaming you personally for this situation.
I'll accept it.
Okay, so I think I'm going to have to name it, and it will come as 0 surprises to anybody. My favourite Single Cask Nation global release, my winner for the year is the Bowmore 11-year-old.
That's
yes.
interesting. I would say that does come as a surprise because...
Does it?
Oh, wait a second. Our Westland was last year. So, yeah, okay. Never mind. Was there Westland last year?
Yeah. There's no
The
Western.
Banyuls?
The global
Yeah,
release,
There
yes.
you go. Okay,
Yes.
so, yep, no surprise.
So I picked this because it's not a secret that when I'm not busy wearing a Westland flag, I am a massive lover of all things Bowmore. And in fact, for some of the categories we're going to discuss later, I was trying really hard to keep it out because I realised last year we definitely had some Bowmore in that nomination. But I couldn't ignore it for this one because I'm super proud that we managed to score Bowmore, call it Bowmore, which is pretty unusual as an indie bottler to have the rights of that. I took it with me to the Feshiel and I poured some of it for David Turner and he gave it 2 thumbs up. So for me, there is no higher endorsement of a Bowmore. I think we done good, as the kids say. And it's kind of juicy young, so it's still got some of that younger Bowmore-iness to it. And it's had a pretty decent 39-month finish in American Oloroso Hogshead, which gives it a little bit more of that kind of recognisable, but I think Bowmore's really famous for being in sherry, so it's got a perfect combination of them both for me. And I've just really enjoyed drinking it, and I'm really annoyed that I, in this current position, only have maybe I don't know, less than a quarter of this bottle left.
Oh boy.
So
Ooh, that's not a lot.
do you want my
You
runners
really
up?
did like it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Love it.
I'm glad you've been enjoying that this year, because one of the things we always talk about is when you gain access to the cask that we've gained in 2024, and you see things like Bowmore, they're automatic home runs. Like, well, why would you not select that? Why would you not bottle that? To then follow through the way we always do with a nose, palate, finish selection, and then for you to be returning to that with a bottle beside you, around you, in your vicinity, speaks to the quality of that cask. And then to have it in front of David Turner, and David Turner give us a thumbs up on the Bowmore selection as well. I think it's such a wonderful, complete story of what we've tried to achieve and what I believe we have achieved with that Bowmore. So kudos on having that in your markets.
yeah.
And just really quickly, for those listeners who may not know the David Turner name, he's the distillery manager of Bowmore. So the guy who's in charge of running that distillery is giving thumbs up to our whiskey that he made. That's awesome.
And that's what I said to him.
Yes, he
I mean,
did.
if you haven't come across David Turner, he is Bowmore man through and through. You know, he's been there since he left school. He is a proper, you know, in my mind anyway, the ultimate authority. He's also famously not into the characteristics that Joshua loves for a Bowmore, which is that FWP. And the fact that he gave this a 2 thumbs up tells me there is not a single trace of FWP happening here. This is modern under his stewardship of the distillery. This is everything I love about where Bowmore's going. And it has that lovely smoke, but for me, the thing that gives it the real Bowmore flavour is it's got black currants like a Ribena. Don't know if you have. Do you have Ribena in the US?
Yeah.
It has that kind of like Ribena-y note to me, and I really like it in amongst all that smoke. So to me, this is delicious. I think it's also a great show that Bowmore is great at a younger age, and then obviously once it's old, it reaches into those legendary tasting notes. So I'm just really advertising this as my warm-up for my eventual 1960s Bowmore that I joke about every year on this podcast. It's my little teaser. Here's your 11-year-old. I think this is great. Would you like to know what my 2 honourable mentions are that I couldn't decide between?
Yeah,
so
go for it.
They came from the latest release, because I've been playing around with a lot of samples recently and talking to people about the latest release as it's kind of trickling out into the markets. So my 2 were the Canvas 35-year-old, because I really like Canvas. I know we talk a lot about Invergordon on the podcast, and as Single Cask Nation, we're big Invergordon fans. But I really think that Canvas has got that lovely kind of, it's really creamy in my mind every time I think about what a Canvas is like. And this one is kind of heading into that more seasonal this time of year. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's got that kind of gingerbread, honey, peppery thing in it, which I really like. Added bonus that it is 12 days older than I am, which is always really fun. Jason always tells me off when I see the cask list that the first thing I start doing, I'm not even looking at what the casks are, I'm always looking at the dates. It's a bit like how people pick lottery numbers. Yeah, how people pick lottery numbers, you know, like they've got all their must-have numbers. So it was a real winner for me. I always judge things that are around my birthday even more harshly, because I don't want to be disappointed by something that is nearly the same vintage as me. So that was my 2nd place. And my 3rd place, because I've talked about it a lot recently, is the Black Spoke Bridge 13-year-old that we have. For those of you with a Google Maps handy, type in Black Spoke Bridge, and the distillery is 5 minutes away. And I was talking to somebody who, if I name their name, will totally give away where this is from. Recently at a festival, who was very impressed with our fanciful naming of it as Black Spoke Bridge, and thought it was very funny.
Are you talking about right? Yeah. Yeah.
They thought it was hilarious. So I've had a tough go around with this distillery recently that's very famous for its sherry, but this has put me right back on track. And again, it's a little bit seasonal, a little bit Christmassy. The season is starting to change here in Glasgow. I'm starting to think about being some sort of, illegal ramen would be nice, or just a really big sherry dram. So that's where I'm at with this.
Dave, that was the only surprise for me on your Bowmore selection, is I thought it would be between the Black Spoke Bridge and the Bowmore for your number 1 spot.
Oh.
And I thought the Black Spoke Bridge might come one with the Bowmore in the second spot for you. So that was the only surprise for me there.
There's a whole bunch of this release.
And then the canvas. I love you mentioned the canvas.
I think as well, there's not a whole bunch of canvas floating around. It seems to go through little pockets of it where I'll see like 3 or 4 indies have a load of it out, and then it sort of vanishes into the ether again. But there are not many that I've seen at this sort of age. So I think that's really nice. And I could then just name the rest of all of our releases, because there's really nothing we've put out in the global markets this year that I haven't really enjoyed. And that's a real pleasure. It's an absolute privilege. That's one of the questions people ask me, what's your favourite? What's your best? Let's not go down that track. But there's nothing really that we've put out that I don't like. And there's some, for people who know my palate and know the things that I like to drink, there's a few kind of surprise notes in the last year that have happened there, like our Ben Nevis I really love, and famously I'm not really into Ben Nevis. I'm not a massive Highland Park fan, but our Stones of Stenness, which may or may not be from a similar distillery, was also really lovely. So the lawyers can stand down now, it's okay.
Oh, you mean from the distillery, right?
So I think that's one of the nature of playing with single casks, is it allows you to really highlight characteristics that you like and ignore some of the bigger batches and blending that a distillery may put out that you feel takes away from that character or mutes the things that you like in it. So I
think that's well said.
That's my incomplete list. Plus, and then 4th place, literally everything else we bottled this year.
Well, it always reminds me of our conversation with Eddie Russell, where we'd asked him his favourite rick house, and he said, I hate to say it, because then that's the wild turkey people want to buy, and they're all good. And so when we come out and say this is our favourite Single Cask Nation, they're all good, right? We put our stamp on every single cask we put out into the world. So,
and this also goes to show that between us, when we're organising the padcost, we don't have some sort of marketing team behind us, because we should have then named all the things which are still available, instead of upsetting people continuously by naming things they can't buy.
Hold that thought. Joshua. Global retail for you, sir.
Global retail. So I definitely have a favorite, and I have a runner-up, and I was very surprised by my runner-up. But I'm going to start with my favorite. And I think that this one is obvious, because, Jason, you and I won't shut up about it, because it is one of the most remarkable casks that at least I've tasted this year, and that's our 16-year-old Tobermory from the French Oak Barrique, non-peated, so it's Tobermory, not Lechig, and it was a game changer. It was the first cask of non-peated Tobermory that had me rethink my position on Tobermory and what that unpeated spirit could do. Ticked every box, just gorgeous, comforting, breakfasty, syrupy, sweet, salty, coastal, all the things.
Absolutely.
Right? So there you go. That's my top one. And my runner-up was a surprise for me, because I typically don't like this distillery's make in a sherry cask.
Okay.
And that's Bowmore. I typically prefer my Bowmores in bourbon, first fill or refill. In sherry, it quite often brings on this sort of really dirty, heavy note, which for my palate at least, which kind of overrides some of the tropical fruity characteristics that I look for, that the bourbon casks, they sort of step back and let those notes shine through. But this Bowmore 11-year-old with that sherry finish has all of the tropical fruitiness, plus the sweet sherry, and not a dirty sherry. So that's what I'm drinking, because I don't have the Tobermory in front of me. I only had the sample. I need to get my sample of the Tobermory. So I'm drinking my Bowmore 11 right now.
There you go. You've got the same thing in your glasses, Jess, over there. I love it.
It's looking good on my bingo card for what you two have predicted. I'm holding that dabber for the third thing. So what Jason's going to tell us next.
So what you're saying here is you were not surprised by Joshua's Tobermory selection? No. Not in the slightest. Okay, well, I have my sample in front of me here. I have the liquid in my glass. I would love to hear what you have on your bingo card for me, Jess.
All right.
Because I cannot change my mind. It is in front of me. It is poured.
We've got the adjudicators ready.
Because there is a very good chance you will get this right. So
either you and Joshua have done some sort of twinsies sharing of the Tobermory, or I feel like you've got a new obsession, which is Balmenic.
I am revealing via video.
Balmenic. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god! I should have bought a lottery ticket today. Oh, nice.
So this has been the year of Balmenic for me.
Yeah,
so my year started with the sherried Balmenic at the Vaults in Edinburgh, the Warmriken Rich, which is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Turned me on to Balmenic cask samples for the rest of the year, other independently bottled Balmenics. When we then, all selected the Balmenic for global retail, there are two particular notes here that I want to draw attention to, and they're both on the palate. One of them is we talk about a mezcal-like vegetable quality or vegetal quality without the smoke. And we always like packing and we like unpacking, and we definitely try to tell stories in the flavor profiles. The other note that is really, really wacky is a tasting note that's on the palate, a tasting note reminiscent of the smell of hot vinyl seating in an old Volkswagen Bug.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Boom.
Yes.
That's wild. It's wacky. It's a distillery that I don't think is on a lot of radars. I think this is a remarkable example. Interestingly, both of you went for sherry cask on your number one choices. I went for bourbon barrel here. And I love the room the bourbon barrel has given this Balmenic. And as it sits and as it breathes, it's cereal and it's buttery and it's vegetal. I think it's remarkable. And so kudos to you for getting that one, Jess. The other clincher for the Balmenic is its June distillation. And we both know that June distillation is the best distillation.
The best of the distillations.
Although now that I say that, it's the 10th day of the 6th month. Yes, it is June distillation.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioning that it's sherry casks for both of us, because I really definitely think recently, of late, if you'd asked me to pick, especially a Bowmore, I think if you'd asked me to pick of late, if I'd gone for the traditional route of bourbon versus sherry, I think increasingly it is bourbon I like. So to me, for what it's worth, I don't know if that makes it more of an honourable mention that I've picked things that are sherried, because I feel like I think there's a lot of sherry out there that does this, and I'm going to use some hand gestures, so apologies to myself listening to this as I'm driving, shouting.
Oh my gosh, every Italian is hoping to see
I spent so much time with Mariella, that's what it is. I think it's that, to me, big casks they take a bit of work. It's not as simple as taking a liquid and shoving it in a sherry cask. There is room for that in the market, and there are definitely people who are looking for like that kind of sucker punch whiskey. But for me, where I've got to in my whiskey journey, I want the casks to be doing a bit more work other than adding like this very one-tone note of like bang in and out. I want it to do a complete, and here's why I'm doing the hand gesture, of a circle. I'm drawing a circle. I want it to do like a whole thing. I don't just want it to add loads of colour and sherry and for there to be whiskey somewhere in the bottom of that and some sort of cask influence. I like them to work together. So to me, that's really important when we're looking at how long we've left liquid in casks, that it's got to be a purposeful, meaningful finish. And for it to have done something other than just add a shed load of colour. Interesting, though, the canvas that we have, that's had a little holiday for 3 years in STR as well, which is a cask type I definitely do like, because I think it adds a lot of kind of like lovely extra fruitiness without too many of the tannins of the wine getting involved in it. So
I agreed wholeheartedly. To close out this segment, my runner-up is actually based on a comment you made while we were tasting it together, Jess. Is for, again, the Stones of Stenness for Global that you mentioned a moment ago. When we were tasting that together, you just kind of looked up and you said, "Sweet heather smoke."
Oh, yeah.
As that started to open up in the glass. And I thought that note was a home run. And I've thought about that note all the way through this year for that Stones of Stenness. So that got my runner-up.
Wow. Cool. I was certain you were going to be mentioning Tobermory. Or maybe I was a bit more, I must be a bit more head over heels for it than...
But now you're doing the things we're telling the listeners not to do, right? Which is none of these selections are belittling any of the non-named items. That Tobermory remains phenomenal. Yep. Absolutely phenomenal. Yep. I could drink that Tobermory to the end of time, but I could also go through every single pick we've made and talk about when we come to Ecom later. There's going to be a bottle that I don't mention, that I will mention because I'm not mentioning it, but it's not in my... You're right. It didn't make that list like the Tobermory. It's a complicated business. Let's move on.
And just to be clear, because Jason, you had mentioned my favorite was a whiskey and sherry. The whiskey and sherry was my runner-up. The Bowmore in sherry. The Tobermory was French oak, not sherry. So just to clarify for the listeners.
Gosh, what a wonderful array of casks we've been talking about. Right? Wonderful. It's been a good 24.
So let's stay within retail, but now we're going to move over to Single Cask Nation U.S. retail bottling. So our favorites and our runner-ups.
Okay, well, I'm going to start here because I've been thinking about this. And whilst I, as part of our acquisition at the start of the year, means I can no longer stick my fingers in quite as much as I was previously able to have the opportunity to do that, there are a couple of things that fly past my eyes, especially when they're then repeated on the old social medias. So I'm going to have to write to Santa Claus America to see if he would like to send me a bottle of the Glen Scotia. Which I had seen happen and then had quietly squirreled it away in my mind as a thing that was happening far, far away. And then I saw our lovely friend in McAllister share on Facebook, and suddenly I was inundated with people asking me where I could point them in the direction of to get a bottle. And having previously quelled my mind and calmed that FOMO, which I suffer terribly from, I was like, no, I do want one of these. I do, actually. So when people have been asking me where, from my side of the pond, they can get it, I have been telling them to book a flight, go to the land of America, and just start hitting up liquor stores. So there you go. My US retail bottling is a bottle that I hope eventually makes its way into my grubby mitts, which is the Glen Scotia.
That is a fine call, Joshua, are you able to get one of those locally for Jess before we fly there for November?
We'll definitely get you sorted. I've got a bunch of other bottles that I've been holding on for you.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad. Jess. I felt that you're going to have extra suitcases. Plus, I've got some other sundry requests from America I've been thinking about making. So why not call you out in the padcost where you can't run away?
But just to add on to what you're saying there and connecting it to your David Turner comment before regarding our Bowmore, here's another bottling where a distillery manager is saying good things about what we're doing with their own whiskeys. And that I got to pinch myself every now and again when, you hear David Turner say these things or you see Ian McAllister say, hey, check these guys out. They bottled a great Glen Scotia. That's pretty special. So
yeah.
It's really special.
Yeah. A bit like your casual name drop earlier of Eddie Russell. Same. It blows my mind that I remain a whiskey nerd in this job. And the fact that sometimes we get to say things like liquid that's part of our everyday existence that was kind of under the guise of these people has made its way back to these people. And they're like, yeah, this is cool. Is endlessly hilarious to me.
It's the fun of being an independent bottler. We get to walk a lot of different paths. So since Jess brought it up, I'll continue on a pace here, and not to torment you, Jess, but It is Glen Scotia in my glass. This is a distillery we have been searching for the length of our company. We had some beginning conversations with that distillery that went in different places. Then it got very difficult to get liquid from them. In 2024, it was certainly part of the shopping list for casks we were looking for, and an absolute gem appeared. And so, yeah, our love of Ian McAllister, the time you and I spent with Ian McAllister, I was going to mention this a moment ago, when you had said, Joshua, for anybody for whom David Turner doesn't ring a bell, we do have the David Turner episode
Indeed.
of One Nation Under Whiskey. We do have, as you mentioned a second ago, Jess, a couple, if not a few, Eddie Russell interviews in One Nation Under Whiskey. And we have Ian McAllister, when you and I sat in his office in Campbelltown, Jess, that Joshua has only lived with the FOMO from being stuck in America.
That was our second interview with Ian McAllister. You and I interviewed him, and then you and Jess interviewed him, Jason. So that was 2 different interviews.
Yeah, he's always worth an interview. He's the very handsome Captain Birdseye lookalike. That's a pleasure to spend time with. So for this Glen Scotia, I've poured it. This has only just come into US markets. I was actually in a store yesterday, All View Liquor. I'll tell a little story that includes them later. And they had just placed their order for it. They were hoping to see it today. And without giving too much away, today is October 22nd.
Ooh, that's a special day. There you go.
Hey, look at him burying the lead.
My wedding.
Enough about my anniversary. What did you think about my anniversary? Well, I will cheers this Glen Scotia to you and Haida.
Thank you. 20 years in. 20 years into this marriage. It's quite a thing.
I also raised a glass on October 20 for you both so that I wouldn't miss the 22nd. But here we are on the 22nd.
Everyone's a bit of a sometimes. Did you have a runner-up, Jason?
I do. And it also got mentioned a lot in conversation yesterday. And it comes down to, I wonder what your runner-up will be or what your winner might be. My runner-up is the Dalyuen that got released into US retail in the very early part of the year.
13-year, I think.
And I poured that at Fog City Social in San Francisco, and people were absolutely blown away by that. And yet Dalyuen, and that gave me a chance in person, when people were a bit nervous about asking for it, they didn't quite know how to say it. There's a lot of vowels in it. And I would say, the Dalyuen, and then people would do their best San Francisco version of Dalyuen. and they loved it. And so again, at Allview Liquors yesterday, Justin, the owner over there, was saying he brought in like 2 cases, 4 cases. Like he just couldn't keep that for people. And I think that was true for JVS out in California, the distributor. That was a real success. And he was asking if there's more Dalyuen coming in 2025.
Watch this space, as the kids say, right?
You adjusted your glasses the same way I adjusted my glasses while speaking to him yesterday. Let's see. So, all right. So there you go. So that was my Glen Scotia, which is just this lovely coastal Campbelltown representation with a distillery manager that we absolutely adore. And then the Dalyuen, a distillery we adore, that has taken on another life of its own the last few years that we've been bottling it for Single Cask Nation within the nation.
Yeah, I had been describing our Glen Scotia to people as if Brooke Lottie had a baby with Glen Scotia and matured it in a New Charred Oak cask, it would be the Glen Scotia. There seems to be a touch of Brooke Lottie going on there, which I quite like. So my favorite SCN retail bottling of the year is actually not part of the most recent batch of whiskeys that are hitting store shelves now, but my runner-up does come from there. But it was tough because my runner-up is pure comfort, and my top pick is out of left field. And I think that's why I picked it, right? My favorite whiskeys tend to be those that change your mind about a distillery, bring new flavors, what have you. And so what I have in my glass right now, you guys may even be able to tell me what it is just by the color alone.
So for the selection I was thinking for you, the cask definitely comes from left field, and so it may have you thinking differently about the cask. The distillery itself is a very, very reliable distillery.
Very reliable.
So this wouldn't have you thinking differently about the distillery. And this, if I am correct, was also on the table at Fog City Social and was between the Dalyuen and the Linkwood 13 for which people had as their favorite on that table. People kept coming back for the Linkwood 13 with that wacky red wine, full maturation. People would say, "Wow, the finish on that's great." I can't believe this was finished in red wine. I would say, full maturation, full maturation, full maturation.
So,
and then tell them the story.
Right? And so you've nailed it. It's the Linkwood 13 in that red wine cask. The label just says, first fill American oak. But it was red wine from a winery in California. And yeah, it's a representation of Linkwood that is completely unfamiliar to me, yet still so firmly Linkwood. And I love that. And I love that your mind could be occasionally changed on what red wine can do to a whiskey. And I think to your point about finishing, right, I think a lot of people's apprehensiveness towards a red wine cask whiskey is that they typically tend to be finished in red wine. And so the spirit doesn't have time to really evolve and really change what some of the wine is doing to the whiskey. It starts off as wine-ski and then evolves into the fruits that you would get from the wine if you were drinking the wine. And that's what we have here. It's just all of the fruits that you would get from Pinot Noir, and it's just gorgeous. And I love what you said about the finishing. It's so funny. People always say finishing, and I have to respond and say, no, this is full maturation. And they say, what does that mean? What does full maturation mean? And I have to say, exactly, and I have to say, when you use the term finishing, what you mean is that is a secondary or tertiary cask that liquid has gone into. That it finish simply means the whiskey started its life in one cask and was transferred to another, with that other being the finishing cask. So it's this argument that I think I will never stop having, where people like to use the term barrel as if barrel is a cask, when a cask is a cask and a barrel is a size designation, where a finish is a shorter term maturation, and full maturation simply means the liquid spent its entire life in there. So wild. Yeah, two things in the Linkwood family here. When you and I were pouring at Travel Bar, Mike invited us in there, and we had a terrific night in New York. And you finally, after far too many months, conceded Pinot Noir, and now you're saying Pinot Noir today, and I'm enjoying hearing that. That was a wonderful moment when you conceded that. You're welcome.
But
I'm very conceited.
But now that I've put the boot to your neck, I will now give you a hug, which is the other day you had said when we were going through some casks, you had asked the provocative question. Ooh. Is Linkwood Distillery the Speyside equivalent of Kalila?
There you go.
In that if you can't put out a good Kalila, you have no business in the independent bottling game. And you were asking the provocative question, if you can't put out a good linkwood, does one have a place in this industry?
Yeah.
I loved that comment. I thought that
Cheers.
was awesome.
Oh, I have so
Cheers.
many.
You're hearing it for the first time live on the podcast, Jess.
I have
Thoughts?
so many non-recordable padcost thoughts on this. I think there's good linkwoods. I've also had a whole bunch of not bad linkwoods, but just wholly unremarkable. Like, it was wet whiskey that wasn't terrible linkwoods.
Yeah, but was it the spirit's fault or was it the cask's fault?
Oh, I think the cask, and then I guess ultimately the person picking the cask.
Yeah, right. And that's the point. It's more a case of if a bottler releases a bad Kalila or a bad linkwood, then obviously they're doing something wrong and should have their independent bottler keys taken from them, because there's so much good Kalila and so much good linkwood that there's no room for bad or mediocre Kalila or linkwood. It just, of course it exists, but if you're an independent bottler and you choose something mediocre or poor, that's on you. That's on you. That's not on the distillery.
Yeah, I'm agreement.
I love this take. For a moment there, Jess looked like you were steeping a tea bag with sugar and milk in the same mug at the same time. She looked scandalized, but she's come around.
Panic over.
Conversation.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of quality of spirit, it is ridiculously consistent, but it's also worth bearing in mind that's entirely what it's designed to be, same as Kalila.
Exactly.
It's part of that little kind of trinity
Yep.
of distilleries up
Absolutely.
in Speyside. I think you could say the same for Inchgau and maybe to some extent Daluin as well. I think, they're designed to be extremely consistent and for a purpose that is not necessarily to titillate the whiskey nerds of the world. They're there to provide fodder into blends and all the amazing witchcraft that comes with creating blends being really consistent when our entire existence is based on showing you, so let's take 3 Daluins that we've got and we'll show you how they're all completely different.
Yeah.
Like the realities of working with that is, I can only imagine a sort of never-ending nightmare.
So
Yeah.
So speaking of titillating and titillation, my runner-up was quite the titillating whiskey. And it's one that I guarantee I'm going to open for my Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm going to put it on the table, and I'm going to ply everyone with it, because it just encapsulates everything that is so comforting to me on the Thanksgiving holiday, and that is our 16-year-old Craigellachie in sherry.
I was waiting on 16-year-old Tobermory for the global market. It's my favorite
And
US
again.
retail release. It's my runner-up.
I love
It
it.
was so good it ran up in a country it's not sold.
Craigellachie, once it gets out of the single-digit ages and starts to edge towards 12 and 13, a lot of the funky qualities drop off or convert into quite fruity qualities. And so you have this strawberries and cream and malt-forward characteristics, good rich fruits, and then that sherry treatment to the spirit is just... It's cranberry sauce on toasted bread. It's all the toasty things. It's all the roasty things. It's all the sweet, comforting things. It's that glass of very old sherry at the end of the dinner to help ease you into the night. Right? It's just perfection. I just love it.
That's awesome. Gosh.
Yep.
Whoa. I don't think I've tasted that since January when we selected the cast.
Yep. Need to taste it repeatedly.
Long time coming.
So we're halfway in now, right? So now I think we need to be easy, Jason. Now we're on to our Single Cask Nation online bottlings, U.S. online bottlings, and Jason, I know that you had said, well, we have to pick our favorite and then a runner-up.
Which I famously disobeyed immediately.
Well, I didn't disobey it, but I'm looking
Do
at.
you have dual winners?
We have dual winners, and but listen, I am always a ladies first kind of guy. So why don't we leave that out there as a little carrot, a little something to dangle in front of people so they can wait for what I have to say. I'm curious, Jess, what you have to say about our online bottlings.
I obviously haven't tasted these ones, but I'm really enjoying watching you guys do videos and tasting notes of them. I always think it seems a really fun way to kind of continue a bit of what we were doing during lockdown, kind of virtually sharing liquid with each other, which I think is a really fun sort of way of sharing liquid, especially if you're really far spread out. So having tasted none of them, I have no official vote. But I'm just going to have to start taking holidays in America or something, I don't know, and setting up a post box in your house to just have all of this delivered to. Yeah, I really enjoyed watching some of the... we had a little focus at the beginning of the year, didn't we, on American single malts. That was fun because that upsets people my side of the pond. They ask me questions as if I have access to some of the stuff that people want that I know we don't. Jason did, so my unofficial vote is for the, obviously, Westland. Jason has muled it across.
Which you were in person for the selection.
Sure. But I don't know, does that mean I've bias voted it? I don't know, it's on my list. I think that might be on my Christmas table. Although at this point, frankly, we need a whole table just for the whiskey. But it's patiently waiting in a little queue I have down here off to the side of where I'm sitting to drink. So I'll report back on that in 2025. So that's as much as I can give you in terms of competent note-taking on the online releases in a market that I don't live.
Yeah, I realize that was a bit of an unfair question, but I appreciate where you stand there.
Just going to have to start taking like 6 monthly trips. I'll alternate between each of your houses. I'll sleep on the couch.
6 monthly trips? Are you going to come out 6 times a month? I love
yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, okay, that's perfect.
Going to get those air miles in. Sorry, Greta Thunberg.
How dare you?
Still have to show you Jack Rose in DC. This
God.
still has to happen.
Yeah,
Jess.
it was. We were so close when we came over for Josh's birthday in December, but we ended up doing a tour going further north into Maine instead, which was absolutely fantastic. But it is, yeah, I need to make it to Jack Rose. Although I feel like I probably need to start pooling my pocket money quickly before I am allowed loose in that bar, and I cause a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah. Yeah, get a hotel 1 street away. Like, you don't want to be going too far from Jack Rose. So,
Okay.
yeah, no, we talk about it all the time. You know, we're so happy that you were in person for that Western selection at the distillery last November, and then, or two Novembers ago. How does time work?
Just one.
That was last November, and then we saw you again in December for Joshua's birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
I managed 3
you were
US
racking
trips
up
last
the
year.
frequent flyer miles.
Wow.
Oh, well, gosh. Yeah, that's what threw my brain. Like, there's no way you would come to Seattle in November and Connecticut in December. And you did. Kudos to you.
I managed
Well
2 trips to Westland last year, which I think seems ridiculous given where I live and where the distillery is not
Given
next to me.
Given that you live 6,000 miles and you went twice in a year, there are people in Seattle who haven't gone once in a year.
But I feel like that when you guys
need to
come
be
here.
an example for those losers.
Yeah, when you guys come here, though, you see more of Scotland than I have done in years. I feel like it's grass is always greener type situation, I think.
It happens, yeah.
Yep.
I never visited a Scottish distillery until I moved to America.
There you go.
And I had opportunities, I just didn't go. That was silly. Regrets, I have a few. That's amongst them. All right. Where are we going? You or me on the e-com? I led the charge on the retail for the US. You lead the charge on the e-com.
All right, so I've picked 2 winners, and the reason I picked 2 winners, Jason, and don't be upset, and you either, Jess, don't be upset with me. I see your smiles. I see
Fucking raging.
fucking raging.
Gutted.
So we have always been a more Scotch whiskey / malt whiskey focused independent bottler, right? But this year we bottled more American whiskey in 1 year than we had compared to previous years, right? So I wanted to have a favorite Scotch whiskey as well as a favorite American whiskey, but I'm going to lead with my runner-up, and the only reason why it's my runner-up is because it's been sold out, and I wanted to...
I need a diagram for this.
I know.
So there's dual winners from each category, but there's a runner-up that comes from one of those two categories or comes from a different category.
Which we don't normally do.
Just follow me here. You guys got this. You're smart people.
I feel like we're sort of...
So
Might need a
I've got two
diagram.
favorites. I've got a favorite Scotch whiskey, and I've got a favorite American whiskey. But I have a runner-up that is separate from my two favorites. But the reason it's the runner-up
I was so
is
close to
only
following
because
this.
it's not available anymore. If it were available, then I would put this here. But I don't want to upset
Where's
people.
here? You would put it here. Where's here?
Here, like in this conversation, within this list.
So your runner-up is not in this list.
I'm
And it's technically a third place whiskey.
I'm going to tell you what the runner-up is. What I'm saying is the reason it is the runner-up is because it's been sold out. And I wanted to give people the opportunity, if they liked what my favorite was, I'd like to give them the opportunity to grab it. And my runner-up, they simply can't because it's sold out.
But if it was available, it would be your winner.
100%. But they're two totally different whiskeys, like two complete ends of the spectrum whiskeys. And so,
Okay.
so
Your favorite SCN online release for 2024 is your runner-up.
Yes.
Correct. You've got all this. Are you Charlie Day with the whiteboard and all the strings and that?
Yeah, I have bits of string around the living room now.
So my favorite. I'll do my. Should I start with my runner-up? Well, how do you want?
I don't think it matters at this point. I think you should just say distilleries. What was sold out that you loved the most this year?
Good way of phrasing it.
Thank you.
Well done.
I parsed all of that exposition into one sentence.
Yeah.
So let's hear it.
Yeah, good. Good on you. Look at you. You're excellent.
Lots of practice.
Go easy. Our Ardnamurchan 5-year-old. Boom. I said it. That's my runner-up. Ardnamurchan is my third favorite distillery after Lagavulin and then Imperial.
And not
Lagavulin,
Glenmorangie.
Imperial, Ardnamurchan. Boom. We bottled a 5-year-old from
Glenmorangie's
Sherry.
dead to him.
Sold out. Unfortunately, can't get it anymore, but holy crap, was that doing all the Ardnamurchan things I wanted it to be doing.
You're welcome.
Coastal sweet, delicious, etc. So that's my runner-up.
You know, we have people who
My-
listen to this podcast and definitively make lists. You made a definitive list there, and I'm worried that someone's going to go back to a previous episode where we had to rank our top 5 distilleries. I don't think Ardnamurchan was in third place in your previous, but someone who has...
It was-
No, it's going.
It's been going
Oh,
up.
it's ascending. Right, okay.
Yeah, it went from...
It's a top of the pops
It
moment.
went from top 10 to top 5, now to top 3. It's just been climbing. It's been climbing the charts. Hey, we got Ardnamurchan
No
here, number
stopping.
3 in the
That
top of the
ye-
pops.
That up-and-coming youngster, there's no stopping them. This is the one direction of distilleries.
Listen, so long as we're in sync, I'm fine with that. So my top pick for SCN Online Scotch whiskey
That's available.
that is available, I selected A because it is remarkably delicious. B, the cask doesn't get in the way of the rich, sweet spirit with subtle smoke. And C, because it's historical. This is our Ardmore 25 with 1998 distillate when they were direct firing
Nice.
their stills.
Good call.
This is history in a glass. You just don't get a
Yep.
lot of this, and it's it's just ticking all the boxes. So yeah, so very comforting, very lovely. And then
Yep, no argument with that. That's great selection.
and then I've famously talked about my top 10 drinks of all time, with bourbon easily being my number 7 drink within that list. However, rye whiskey is my number 4, drink within that list.
You love a number. It's amazing how much you love a number. Like, whether they mean anything or not, you
They
love
mean
a
things
number.
to me.
They
mean things to me.
Do you gain comfort from the numbers? Like, because
I like
I think if you
categorization.
sat down and
I like categorization, compartmentalization. I like putting things in their place. Just like you
In
put me in my
boxes,
place,
yeah.
right? All the time, Jason.
always early and often, and just like Haida's done for 20 years.
So my favorite American online release is our 4-year-old Wilderness Trail Rye. It's
Yep, figured it had to be.
right. It's giving off all the complexities that you expect from a Scotch whiskey, but just a different flavor profile with sweet and spicy and floral and oaky and citrusy and it's doing all the things and it was a revelation for me in that distillery as well. You know, following its trajectory, not particularly loving some of its younger spirits at 1 and 2 years of age, but then once we saw it at 4 and 5 and so on. It's so nice to see when a distillery's spirit really comes into its own, at least for my palate. And man, if that wasn't a home run. So there you go. Ardmore 25 and Wilderness Trail 4-year-old.
Yeah, I think those are both absolute crackers in pouring them for people. They have absolutely turned heads, where I think on the Ardmore people have gone from, oh, it's an older Scotch, maybe I prefer them younger, to saying, holy moly, what is this Ardmore doing?
Yeah.
I remember the lemon pinwheels component that we talked about. And then we had, Simon Brooking, and we discussed it with Simon Brooking, and he tasted it, and he loved it as older Ardmore. The Wilderness Trail, that real delicate nature of that, the florality of that Wilderness Trail has really turned heads for people in tastings. So, to Jess's comment from earlier, with no production meeting at all and with no plan in place, I have continued to zig where others have zagged amongst these rulings. And I did stick to a number one. I will, of course, have runners up, and this is where I will mention a distillery that is not my number one that regular listeners may have assumed would be. I maybe assumed it would be. But this is a bottling that I continually recommend for people. I continually pour for people when they come to my house.
Okay.
And from a distillery that I continually champion here in America. And when I tell you it has the most delicious chocolate-covered cherry component to it and an earthiness that is off the charts. I, a self-prescribed Scotch man of whiskey, have not got a Scotch selected.
This is, Jess, should
Breaking
we consider
news.
an intervention here? Like, clearly he's gone off the wall here.
I think we should let him give his vote, though, just in case we agree with him. Just in case.
Oh, I hope
Are you sure you're Scottish,
agree with
Jason?
me.
I mean, I listen to your accent and I hear a twinge. I thought it was maybe Irish or transatlantic.
Yeah, I identify as Canadian American, and
Canadian.
yeah, this is a grain that some people have as their number 4, but I think your number 4 is potentially American rye is the 4th. I'm not sure where Australian rye ranks amongst all of your numbers, but this is our backwoods from Yakindanda with Lee and Bree Atwood. And I honestly sit here as somebody who tells people about this cask all the time. And to your point, Jess, about with the restructuring of the company and bottles go in different directions and it's hard to dip our fingers in the till anymore.
Oh, whoa. Careful now. Just in case HR are listening, it was not one of us is sat genuinely in their own flat, which they pay money to be in. It's not a breaking into someone's home situation and helping themselves to the company goods. Calm down.
I have paid my own money to purchase bottles of backwoods to ship to my house in Virginia to continue drinking this, sharing this, pouring this. I'm so proud of this. I love the story behind it, the relationship behind it. The whiskey is everything. And to have 2 casks, cask 16 and 23, be vatted in the original cask 14 from our first collaboration really speaks to that, intertextuality that we get up to in Single Cask Nation as well.
Someone ate a dictionary this morning. Wow.
We quote James Saxon so much that I wanted to give him a break. So intertextuality
You just
became
don't want to pay the
reference
royalties. I see what it is.
Yeah, now he's head honcho at Compass Box. We got to be careful. I've also dropped hundreds of names in today's episode.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get a broom out later and sweep them up off the floor. I've dropped so many.
There you go. Speaking of name drops.
Hey! That's going to set me up for the last part of my what I want to present. So, backwards. Now, what is left unsaid in this entire conversation is how much we love Glenmurray and the new Glenmurray.
Man.
How much the Aberfeldy and the Ben Nevis have been flying out the door. How we've done Kalila in sherry and we've done Williamson in bourbon, right? Left unsaid in all of this. My runner-up is the Athrusk.
Wow. Well, you really came out of left field. I thought there was a ball gag you had on your shoulder there.
No, that's just the marks from my bipod.
Okay.
What did I say? On one of the episodes we were tasting the Athrusk. What did I say? It reminded me of old school whiskey when I was first cutting my teeth, and it transported me back to my apartment in Aberdeen.
Yep.
Boom, boom, and boom.
Boom and boom.
That's a winner. That's a winner for me every day of the week. Now, I don't yet consider myself an Athrusk fetishist. Jess is leaning in so that I don't stutter.
Careful now.
I am not an... cut to this time next year. Jess, Joshua, I am an Athrusk fetishist.
That's why we were in the
but
gimp
for the
suit.
moment,
Okay, got it. Yep.
For the moment in 2024, I'm dipping a toe into an alternative lifestyle. And I like what I'm finding.
I'm worried, padcost listeners. I think
I like it in
we've
here.
got kind of
I'll be honest.
2-ish months left of 2024 for him to go full Athrusk. And I'm worried. I'm worried what Jason 2025 looks like. Did you know that... so here's an Athrusk fact for you that I've carried in my little brain for forever for no reason at all. Jason and I both attended the University of Aberdeen, and I can't remember what the fancy word for a 500th anniversary is. It's something like...
Quincentennial.
Maybe that's the word. There was a decanter. The university released for its 500th anniversary a decanter whiskey with a bottle. It was a decanter, an engraved decanter with the logo of the university on it, and it was a 26-year-old Athrusk. And I have no idea why my brain has squirreled away this information to present to you here in October 2024. But I just thought you'd really enjoy that, as you're clearly joining the cult of Athrusk. It's facts like that get you fast-tracked right on in.
Look at that. It was in my DNA this entire time. Who knew?
Will resist it with every fibre of my being. And I know I said I wasn't going to vote for an online bottle, but I did have one bottle of the Ardmore 25, and I poured it in an online tasting against all independent bottlers, and that's what I was having a quick scroll through my phone because I was like, I couldn't remember what else was in the lineup, and now I've looked at the lineup. It's embarrassing that I couldn't remember. But the good news is, listeners, we absolutely smashed it. It won by a country mile. We were up against Adelphi's Mortlach 17, a little Speybolt Macallan from 2005, a Canvas, interestingly, 91 from Signatory, and a very old Creative Whiskey Company Wardhead cask sample bottle that we had.
Wow.
in the cupboard. So there you go. Wow. I knew I had the Ardmore as you were talking about it. Something in my brain just fizzed a bit, and I thought, I have had an online
terrific.
bottle.
Thanks ever so much, Jess.
It was delicious, and I was really annoyed we used it on a tasting because that obviously limits to my amount of 2 pours of it. And it was really nice.
That's the only way I get. Yeah, that's the only way I'm tasting our US retail releases, right? By the time this episode drops, I'll be in LA doing a series of retail releases. And the first thing I'll be doing is reacquainting myself with everything we selected and put into retail bottles. So why episodes like this are so good when we're revisiting everything we've put out globally in 2024. Brilliant.
Yeah. So speaking of things that we've put out in 2024, how about we stop talking about the things we've put out in 2024 and talk about the things that we've tasted in 2024 that other people have released that have floored us and have become a suggestion to fellow whiskey lovers. What's your top non-SCN pick for 2024? Jess Lomas.
Oh, now this is really awful because you said it had to be released in 2024, and traditionally I use this portion of the podcast as a massive bragging right for the things that I've drunk that will make you all furious. And I'm going to be honest.
I figured that was going to become a side segment of this. Here's the amazing shit Jess tasted in 2024.
It's really upsetting. It's not many forums I have that I can brag like this. You know, like if I tell my mum things I've drunk, she's like, ugh, why are you drinking old things people have had in their cupboards? Are they out of date? Is it safe? Or I say things and she just says, did you like it? And I'm like... there are people who will give their firstborn children away to drink this. And you're just like, yeah, that sounds fun. Or we used to go on holiday near there. Okay, so I'll high speed through my bragging list.
Classic mum chat. I love it.
It's not her fault. She doesn't drink, which is why I have to drink for her. So a few episodes of the podcast ago, when I went up to see the guys from Kythe, there was obviously that magical Glendronach that I've sent the picture to. That was pretty good. I mentioned the Brora that I had in Berlin, 1972.
How
are things going at bragging camp, Jess?
Real good, man. So I'm gonna. I also have one that's not whiskey, which I think is worth a hashtag humble brag.
100%. Yeah.
I was just thinking hashtag humble brag, but yours was missing the humble.
It's very humble. Not like if I was a famous whiskey writer, if I was a Dave Broom or a Serge Valentin, you're like, these are just everyday aperitifs. Just, sailing on through, blah, blah, Karazar, another bro.
Just to whet the palate, Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, though, when I look at my phone and I look at the things that I've drunk, I'm like, gosh, yeah, I've drunk lots of nice things this year. It's a really difficult world, guys. It's really hard.
So here's why, Jess. Yeah. Here's why I do try to hold your feet to the fire, because I think with everything you're tasting and the vast array of whiskies you've got at your fingertips, I think when you say, here's a thing that was released in 2024 that would look good under the Christmas tree or during the gift-giving season, I think it carries a lot of weight. And so that's why I love hearing the hashtag humble brag minus humble. I love hearing that, but I'm also curious what in 2024 was produced that you think is worth time, money, gifting, sharing. I think that's important.
Okay, well, as the final note of my hashtag humble brag, it was a new bar to me, so I'm calling that a new 2024 release. Earlier this year, I did a bit of a Scandi Nordic road trip. And I ended up in a town in Sweden called Gävle, which is where Magnera famously is based. And they're also home to a terrible hockey team. And I'm only saying this to upset Swedescott. And that's where his team Brynäs come from. But Brynäs are going to make me a lot of money at the end of the year, so I'm excited about this. Okay. We have a bet on. But I don't want to jinx it. I'll report back on that in 2025 when I am the glorious victor of the bet. But we found a bar that we went into and they had a whole bunch of whiskies that they obviously didn't have a clue what they were, but we went in and got very excited when we looked at the prices of them. And they had a Balvenie 1976 vintage casks. That's the ones that come in those kind of squarish boxes with a white label. They had that for about...
with the handwriting kind. It looks like hand... Oh, wow.
They had that for about £25 a pour. at Scottish pour. They sell it by the centiliter in Sweden, but it works out as about £25. And that was very exciting. So we were drinking rounds of that with Talisker 30-year-old for about 50 quid. So if you tip me generously, I'll tell you where that bar is. So that's the end of my humble brags of things that you... I mean, like, we didn't empty the bottle. It's still there. So you could all go to Gävle. It's very easy to get there from Stockholm. It's like 40 minutes on a train or something. So
it's as available as a Glenmorangie Pride back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Very, very... I bet they exist somewhere. Okay, so my favourite thing that I've drunk this year that is not whiskey, so I'm inventing this category, but I'm inventing it because I am still thinking about it several months later. I was lucky enough to be invited to the relaunch of Decadent Drinks Whiskey Sponge, which is transitioning into Whiskey Land, and they're changing their range a little bit. And they had a few notable guests. It was a very exciting who's who of the industry, and then little old me in the corner. And they had a phenomenal magical cognac from a company that's, they're a young cognac producer called Jean-Luc Pasquet. And he was there with his wife, Amy, and she had a very cool one-of-one bottle of cognac in her bag that if you asked nicely, she would share with you. And it was a... So this is a humble brag, but actually a 2024 release, so stick it to you, Jason.
Okay. All right. Okay.
A one-of-one that was a mixture of vintages from the 70s, 80s and 90s, and it might have had 60s in it too, and it was just unlike anything I've ever drunk that's cognac. It was just like this glorious liquor. So it has sent me on a mission for 2025 to drink more cognac.
There you go.
But I'm already a fan of cognac whiskies, so I feel like maybe that could be my... It's slightly more, I think, achievable for me to learn about the mezcal in the UK. I can hop to France much more easily than I can to Mexico.
There you go.
So there you go. Cognac is on my list, and I've had a couple of other bits by the Pasquets, and it's really magical liquor. So go and look for those cognacs. So that's my...
Just quickly on cognac, somebody asked me literally the other day, is there any of your 1989 cognac left? That we did for Single Cask Nation online. I was like... I don't even have a bottle of that.
Yeah.
Like, that just sold out, went away, was gone. And now people are starting to say, like, oh, yeah, I loved my bottle of that. Like, are you going to do more cognac? So, again, adjusting glasses for those on video. Watch this.
That's a fun idea. I'm definitely no bounds by any level an expert. I'm a very, very beginner of the cognac world. So would love the opportunity to try a whole bunch more. But what I did try was... really magical. It was, sorry Angus, it was the thing I came away thinking about, not the previews of your other very exciting and delicious whiskies, was about this cognac. So that's my best non-whiskey that I have drunk of 2024, which is sort of available. You can buy lots of nice Pasquet cognacs. And then I've kind of copped out, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this, for my favourite thing that I have drunk that is not SCN of 2024. Jason just more or less headbutted the camera then. And the reason for this is because of the experience I had with the whiskey. And this is sort of a humble brag, not a humble brag. During the festival, I was invited by the very lovely Ollie to be basically kidnapped on Isla, which is something I wasn't aware was possible.
Don't tell your mum that one. I was kidnapped.
Oh, well, if I told her that we were in a bus and then we got in the back of a tractor and we were taken to a bothy in the middle of nowhere, she really would think I need to stop drinking. Where Ollie was launching the Elements of Isla Fireside whiskey. It's a very obtainable, very delicious, everybody should buy it and gift it whiskey. And Ollie was telling the story of how it's, you know, something to sit by a fireside, that it's all about the experience. And we had some fun up there. We played some silly games. The Ballygrant had Donna's, David and Ewan were there doing some really nice dinner. But the reason that I'm nominating this as my favourite thing is not just to do about the technical bit of whiskey. Obviously, anybody who's had the Elements of Isla whiskies know that they are very well put together, delicious whiskies. But it reminded me of one of the reasons that I really love this industry and I really love whiskey is about sharing it with people. And we had to do a kind of homework exercise as we're in this very cute bothy, which I'm hiding from so I don't get eaten by the midges. And we were all armed with a piece of paper and a pen, and we had to write down a whiskey memory. And it was really difficult for me to write one memory on a piece of paper that's about whiskey, because I know I often come on this podcast and seem like a really awful bragger. It's only because you guys are the safe space for me to brag about my whiskey life too.
No, Jess. No, Jess.
Nobody has an idea how much I hate spreadsheets, tell you. Except people who follow my Instagram mental breakdowns about pricing trees. The idea of coming and being in a bothy, which in itself is such an evocative, that's a basic stone building, sounds too fancy. It's basically 4 sides with a door and a fireplace in it and some sort of low slung roof. There's no electricity, there's no water, no toilets, nothing. Just long wooden benches that we all played games on and had a really nice time. And we sat and wrote this. And Ollie wrote a lovely story about like what Islay means to him. And so the story that I wrote was all about Project 1989 and how we came up with that and what came out of that, these whiskey friendships that I have built and these people from around the world that came to Islay. And obviously we had such a good time that afterwards the world was shut down for 3 years. So that's a sign of a good party, right?
You broke the world.
Yeah. And so being able to drink this whiskey, which has got lots of those kind of like rich notes, it really, honestly, Fireside is a perfect name for it. It's where you want to be drinking it. It's how you want to drink it. But the idea that you're sat, you can have quiet contemplation by yourself by a fire, or you can be with a group of friends talking silly stories, talking all sorts of nonsense like we usually end up doing when we're around a fire. So to me, that is why I am voting for it. This is not to suck up to Ollie. That's my genuine endorsement.
Yeah, I love that. I think it encapsulates so much of what we love about whiskey. It's sharing it with other people. It's being real. It's being authentic. Yeah, I love that recommendation, Jess.
Okay. I also think it's available globally, so people on either side of the pond cannot write to me and be furious that I've picked a whiskey they can't get, you know, like when I pick a Bro 1972, blah, blah, blah. So
restate the name for listeners.
So it's Elements of Islay, and it's called Fireside.
There you go.
And it was launched at the Fest Shield, so should be...
What kind of strength are we talking on?
Cask strength, from what I remember. Let me see if I can... It is 58.9%.
Woofty.
So it's everything you want in a whiskey. It's got a bit of smokiness, it's got a bit of sherryness, and then some really nice kind of orange peel. Like on the bottle, they've got it down as candied orange. So that's it's an Islay blended malt. It's everything I want at Christmas.
That's awesome.
There you go.
That's a
Very nice.
real cracking
And
recommendation.
if you have that on your bingo card, listeners, I will personally pay you for reading my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, could not have guessed that one from you. Although I remember you talking about that experience and how much it meant to you. So that's great to hear. You next or me next, Joshua?
I'll go. I'll let you round it out. So I have a favorite, but I do have a runner-up as well. And it's interesting, Jess, that you brought up the Fireside Elements of Islay as your top pick. Now, that's not my pick. That's not why I'm saying it. But the reason that I bring this up is my runner-up is a cask selected by our good friend Ollie Chilton for Single Malts of Scotland. And it is, I'm just going to grab the bottle.
It's the Oliver Chilton section of the padcost.
I promise we did not collude on
I hope
this
you're enjoying this, Ollie.
Yeah, sorry, Ollie, that we're massively embarrassing you.
So
He's paying us a lot to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This was bottled in August of 2023, but it didn't come to the U.S., I think, until 2024, and then I tasted it in 2024.
Which I think is a fair point to make about our Ardmore 25 that you selected. We released it in the spring of the year. It was bottled the end of last year to come over here for the spring. So I think this is perfectly fair, perfectly within the rules. Good. This is not a Jess Lomas breaking of any rules.
Gosh, she really likes to break the rules. She's like, I found a rule and I broke it. Wait, hold on a second. I didn't break it enough. Let me stomp on it a bit more. Yeah.
This is the only place I do it. I am such a goody two-shoes, honestly. There's something about you two that just make me feel rebellious.
She only makes rules so she can break them.
Yeah, checks out. So my runner-up is a single cask of Manachmore for...
Hey, and 16 years old.
16 years old, and this was bottled...
That's the number of today's podcast.
This was, right? Yeah, all my favorite whiskeys are 16. This was bottled for a Storied Company, which is Dennis Lynch's shop out of Indianapolis, Indiana. So you can only get it in his shop. But, Manic Moore, you said it earlier, Jason, right? This year has been the Balmenic year for you. And a few years back, Bikram Singh at Norfolk introduced me, or really opened my eyes to Manic Moore. And so now I've been on a bit of a hunt. And this one is, this Manic Moore does all of the zagging where the rest of the Manic Moores are zigging. It's just its own animal, and I absolutely love it. So that's my runner-up. 182 bottles, refill bourbon, and 54.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 54.5.
Wow.
So.
Wow. A lot of Manic Moore shining through in there with refill bourbon.
And so my pick of the year, which I only got to taste as a sample, but Jess, you have a bottle waiting for me at your flat, if I'm not mistaken, unless you drank it all.
Starts turning over pillows, opening cupboard doors. Go on, she says.
This is the Ardnamurchan Sauterne cask release.
That's a trick. It's not in my flat. It's in the office.
Oh, okay.
And I know this because I keep looking at it, being like, wow, I bought this, but I haven't drunk it yet. Oh, it's not mine. Don't drink that.
Right? Ardnamurchan, I can't... they keep on creeping up my list of favorite distilleries. Yeah.
That's your number one distillery, am I right in saying that?
1.2.
So
no, we haven't reached 1 yet.
It's my number 3 distillery maturing their whiskey
1.65.
in my number 2 cask. Right? So my number 1 cask is ex-bourbon. My number 2 cask is ex-Sauterne. And my number 3 distillery is Ardnamurchan, which makes it my number 1 whiskey for 2024.
Talk about a tenuous list. I love it.
Yeah, I do love numbers.
Do you know the Riddler from Batman listens to this guy and goes, what the fuck is he talking about?
So you have to change the frequency of your speakers for it to make sense.
Yeah, exactly. What's the frequency, Kenneth? No one knows. But here we are. Yeah. It's there's not an Ardnamurchan I've tasted to date, and granted, I haven't had the Ardnagurchan yet, but hopefully that'll change. There's
I have
not
some
an
of that. I'll
Ardnamurchan
give you
that I've
that.
tasted to date that just hasn't turned my head. That hasn't, at the very least, made me smile and say, "Oof, these guys are onto something." Right? Just great.
Let's
stuff.
put Ardnagurchan in our minds for November when we're all together.
There you go.
Like that would be a great time.
I'll have to do
pull
a
that
rummage.
out,
But
if
given the
possible.
disgusting notes that you guys have highlighted as some of your favourite things, which I worry, as a lawyer's standpoint, that we're possibly damaging our own reputations here. There's nothing in Ardnagurchan that Joshua won't love. So I love Ardnagurchan. I think it's brilliant. But the things that you mentioned, like the baby sick, the FWP, all these things, Ardnagurchan is not half as wild. I think if you're sensitive to the flavours that's in that, then you're going to be extremely bothered by it. But I think you two are going to think it's hilarious. So we'll come back to that in November.
I've had it. I was just blown away by how farmyardy it was. Like, it was a lot of farmyard. I like a little bit of farmyard. It was a lot.
Was it like
farmyard.
drinking cow pies? Or I guess I'll find out in November.
There
you go.
Yeah. Hold that thought until the time comes.
Right. Jason, it's everything falls on you now, Jason.
All right. So fuck it. Let's break the rules. So I've got.
Oh, it's okay when you do it.
Fuck it, dude. Let's go bowling.
Yeah, I've learned from both of you today. I'm gonna put on my leather jacket and go a little bit crazy over here, by recommending one spirit and one non-spirit.
Oh, all right. So Mountain Dew, that was your top soda of the year.
Iron Brew, obviously.
This is products put out by entities that are not Single Cask Nation for this segment.
Got it. Go on.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna bury the lead. I do have a Scotch whiskey recommendation for buyers in November, December, as we get out of 2024, and a bit like Jess over here, talking a little bit of community over here. I tasted this at Jack Rose in a tasting downstairs in the speakeasy. I think it was actually the first tasting since they reopened the space downstairs. And we went through the distillery's offerings, loved everything about it. This was the bonus pour that closed off the night. And I didn't buy a bottle on the night, even though bottles were for sale. There were 6 bottles for sale. I didn't buy a bottle because, like, consumers were in the room, and I figured I'll get a bottle later. I'd rather consumers walked out of here with these. If they don't sell out, I'll buy one and I'll take it home. They sold out in 2 minutes. Everything available sold out in 2 minutes at the end of the tasting. So this is a distillery that you and I, Jess, had the opportunity to visit, I think, a month after Joshua had the opportunity to visit. It is very near and dear to my heart. It is, I'm trying to think, the next sentence is going to give it away. No matter what the next sentence is, it's going to give it away.
I know exactly. Right. Go on. I know exactly.
They grow their own barley. They distill their own barley.
Robbie Burns.
It has historical significance to Scotland's national bard. David Ferguson, a fellow Ayr man, had come over to the East Coast, was doing a little tour with Jared Card, and I went to Jack Rose, specifically for a Loch Lee tasting.
There you go.
And tasting through it was fantastic. Championing Ayrshire was fantastic. And what I was tasting made me so proud, so very, very proud. And then they closed out with the cask strength Loch Lee batch 2. And it's sherry and STR, right? A couple of the words we've been bandying about today. But it also talks about, the back of the label says, our master blender has selected a combination of Oloroso, PX, and STR casks. And then I'm going to tell you a very quick story if I can here. So I remembered it from my tasting. I've been recommending it since the tasting. In preparation for this episode, I wanted to get my hands on a bottle. Obviously, I live in Virginia. It's not easy to get your hand on a bottle. We also had a little bit of that moment that we talked about with the SCN US retail, where it lands in California and you wait on it coming to the East Coast, and it adds a bit of time to it. So I thought, I'll be in the Mid-Atlantic. I'll be able to grab a bottle of batch 2 real easy for the recording. I dropped Jared Card a text and on Sunday, I said, Jared, I'm going to be in the Mid-Atlantic. Where can I get a bottle? And he said, Allview Liquor. It's probably as close to Baltimore as you're going to get. It's 20-minute drive outside the city. And so I go there on the Monday morning, and I'm looking at the shelves. They've got the Loch Lee single cask. They've got a lot of great things. And they don't have the cask strength. So I ask at the register. A quick aside. When I couldn't find the Loch Lee, as any of us do, I purchased the 2024 Lefroy Carchus bottle and the Westland American single malt bottle to represent them in the Mid-Atlantic.
There you go.
So, aside done. So I take my 2 bottles up to the counter and I say, I'll take these. Is there any chance you have the Loch Lee cask strength batch 2 to Shub, who was working the register? And Shub says, looks in the system, I've got 1 bottle of Loch Lee cask strength, but it doesn't say which batch. And I say, could I take a look at it? And so she takes a wee look, she brings out the bottle, I look at the box, batch 1 is front and center on the box. And I go, I already own that one. Yeah. I'm looking for batch 2. Yeah. And she says, well, what are you going to do? So I leave. I buy my other 2 bottles, my Lefroy and my Westland, and I head out to the car and I text Jared and I say, no dice. And he says, how soon can you be in DC? I'll have a bottle for you.
Wow.
And I say, I can be there in 35 minutes. And I take off driving. And while I'm driving, he's texting me. I'm not able to answer texts because I'm driving very safely. And eventually, Jared
it's a fictitious
calls me.
Story, that's how we know. Yeah, driving safely.
And Jared calls me because that's the smart way to do this when you're in a car. And he says, okay, we're not going to be in DC. We're going to be in Georgetown. They're 2 miles apart. It adds 30 minutes to my drive. And so I'm driving and I'm driving and I'm driving. And I drive past Potomac Wine and Spirits in Georgetown. Jared is stepping out of the store with James Wills from Kilhoman. And I roll down my window, I shout his name, I get his attention, I drive on past because there's never any parking in DC or Georgetown. It's a nightmare. So I'm driving. He calls me again. He directs me to where he's parked. And so I turn a street, I come down a street, and I meet Jared at his car. He says, here's your Loch Lee. And I say, Jared, thank you so much. I can't believe you've done this for me. You're a mensch. And I look at the box, and it says batch 1.
Jesus Christ.
And I say, Jared, I need batch 2. This says batch 1. He says, turn the box around. The back of the box says batch 2. He says, pull out the bottle. It says batch 2.
Okay.
He goes, yeah, somebody fucked up at Loch Lee, and batch 1 is on the front of the batch 2.
Wow.
But the bottle label in the back of the box, the reason I'm telling this story is I want consumers to know if I'm recommending
exactly.
this. If you have a box, open it up, check it's batch 2, or turn it around, it'll say batch 2. I then start driving back towards Baltimore. I get a text from the owner of Allview, Justin, who I mentioned previously. Justin is texting me to say, Jason, I've got the batch 2 for you. The box says batch 1, but the back of the box and the bottle label say batch 2.
Amazing.
I say, Justin, I'll be right there. So I started my day with none. I went through my day thinking I had 2 access points to batch 1. I ended my day owning 2 bottles of batch 2. So that's what I've got in my glass. It is sherried, it is bright, it is cereal, it's nutty, it's sherried. Everything we've talked about in today's episode for sitting on the holiday table, right? The Hanukkah table, the Thanksgiving table, you know, the Kwanzaa table, what have I missed? Christmas, maybe? I don't know what I've missed. Right? The festival table
Boxing
is
Day.
calling
The Boxing
out
Day table.
for this.
Yeah.
The Boxing Day table. This will be on my Boxing Day table, I guarantee you. So I think this is a home run. It represents a distillery that your Ardnamurchan is working its way up your list. My Loch Lee is working its way up my list, along with Ardnamurchan, which again, I'm not dismissing Ardnamurchan. I love Ardnamurchan. Loch Lee, special place in my heart.
Yeah.
That's my spirit. My non-spirit, again, holiday buying guide. Highly recommend
Buckfast.
you get your hands. I'm going to recommend Dave Broom's World Atlas of Whiskey, 3rd edition. I think as we talk through this episode, you hear the jumping off points for if you don't know David Turner.
Yeah.
If you don't know the difference between finishing and full maturation, if you don't know some of these global distilleries that we are readily throwing into conversation, this is a fantastic coffee table book that is very readable, stuffed with information, and I'm checking the price. This is showing £45 for the UK, $55 for the US, and $69 for Canada. For a coffee table book that's this informative, I absolutely recommend it for the established whiskey drinker in your life or the person looking to become an established whiskey drinker in your life.
I just need to add on to that. So, like you, I received a copy of this, and I wasn't familiar with, his World Atlas of Whiskey books previously. I was familiar, with some of his other books. And when it came in the mail, I said, "Oh, geez," because I'm not a coffee table book kind of guy. Like, that is just something you leave on the table and you never look at it. But then
Yeah, that's a mistake.
right, it's absolutely a mistake because it's a fantastic book with tons of information, very easily digestible. I'm still paging through it. When I just want some downtime, I open that up and I page through it.
Dip into any segment.
Yeah.
Right, you don't have to read it from cover to cover. You can dip in as you see fit. Our very dear friend Amanda Beckwith at VDC is quoted in it. Anna at Westland was telling me the Westland section should be all new.
Yep.
So yeah, we've got really good friends represented in those pages as well. And it's just incredibly well done. We'll have Dave on a future episode to talk about third edition. He'll be on a tour of the US in the spring. We may have a chance to hang out with them when that time comes as well. So all good stuff. So there you go. I broke rules. I hope you're both proud of me. I feel like I've joined a motorcycle gang this day.
Delighted. Well done. You've made it through our light hazing and come out successful at the other end.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for building your list, establishing your list, explaining your list. This is always a highlight for me every year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And getting to drink along the way was quite nice. As you were explaining your last bits, I poured some of that Wilderness Trail, and what a lovely note to end on. But so thanks to you both, and thanks, of course, to our listeners, who, by the way, Jason, in our last episode, you had challenged them to make distillery suggestions to us for, if they'd like to see us bottle whiskey from this distillery or that distillery.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So while we won't be discussing that in this episode, we've got a number of emails, a number of Facebook chat messages and text messages and so on. So we're going to talk about that in a future episode.
Nice.
So thanks to all who've done that. It looks like you've got something to say before we get out of here, Jason. Was there something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to throw in as we kind of start to build next episode, we'll have a very deep dive at Virginia Distillery Company. And recorded some really great stuff when I was down there in October that'll come up in the next November episode. So really excited to share that and to hear some of the correspondence from the nation as well.
Just to be clear, you said down there. You weren't in Australia. You went to...
I went 1 hour and 5 minutes south of my house.
You weren't down
so
there.
I went Virginia. Not all the way in Yakindanda. But no. One day, Yakindanda. One day. Next year in Yakindanda.
Jess, Jason, thank you both so much. This was an absolute blast. Thanks to the listeners, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. I can't wait to talk about Virginia Distillery at that time.
Awesome. Cheers.
All right.
Cheers, everybody. Happy shopping.
Yeah, cheers.
Happy shopping.
And happy holidays.